Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk about morale checks. Platoon morale checks and company morale checks. And there is a difference between a motivation test and a morale test. They both use the same motivation. I hate to use that word for it since there's a motivation test, but they both use the same motivation rating, which would be that fearless, confident, reluctant. With the fearless needing 3+, confident needing 4+, and reluctant needing 5+. So it's going to use the same rating, but there is a difference between a motivation test and a morale test. A motivation test, that is, you want the platoon to do something. You want them to remount their vehicle. You want them to rally from being pinned. You want them to counter assault in the assault. So that's motivating. Hopefully they're motivated enough to do that. A morale test is basically, are they going to stay in the game? If you fail that morale test, they're gone. They're no longer available for the game. So that's the difference between a motivation test. They're still in the game, but they may not do what you want them to do. Where a morale test, if they fail, they're out of the game. So this first section, I'm going to talk about platoon morale checks. I'll get to company morale checks a little bit later in the video. So right now we're just talking about platoon morale checks. So when do you make a morale check? You make it at the end. This is the very last thing you do on the shooting step or the assault step. So at the end of shooting step, the opponent's done with all their shooting and everything. They're getting ready to go to the assault step. You make your platoon morale check if you need to then. The opponent's done with their assault step. They're getting ready to, it's getting done with their turn, it's getting ready to go to your turn. When they're done with that, and they're done with the assaults and everything, then you do a check at the end of the assault step. So it's the very last thing done at the end of the shooting step and the end of the assault step. So who needs to make a morale check? Basically, a platoon that has more teams destroyed than still fighting. And I'll go into more explanation of that just a little bit later in the video. It's coming up real quick here. I'm just laying out the groundwork right now. So when you need to check, or what forces will need to check, is if the platoon has more teams destroyed than still fighting. And also, if it has more teams destroyed or forced to bail out during this step. So whether they got destroyed or you bailed them out, it may trigger a platoon morale check for that unit that got hit. So how do we check this? Well, let's take a look at this platoon here. And actually, I'm going to take these guys off for right now. And you'll find out later why for this explanation purposes. So if we look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. And you know what? These 3 and this one gets destroyed. So we've lost 4. We have 2. So they've lost more than are living. And I'll get to more about that because there's some little extra rules there. They're going to make a platoon morale check. And we're going to say they're confident. Remember, it's that fearless, confident, reluctant. Confidence of 4+. So, and they rolled a 6. So they made their platoon morale check. They continue fighting. They're in the game. They're still going to blast away with their gun. Now, what if... I'm going to make this go. Fail. There we go. They rolled a 1. They failed. They're removed. They're destroyed. That whole platoon is gone from the game now. So that is how you do it. You just roll 1 die. Compare it to their, I hate to say the word, but their motivation rating. Reluctant, confident, or fearless. If you're successful, oh, they're going to stay in the game with who's ever surviving. If they fail, they're immediately taken off the board. Now, there's some things you leave on the board, and that would be these armored vehicles. So let me bring this platoon out here. So I'm just going to have these three. So this one gets destroyed, and this one gets destroyed. So now, you got 2 destroyed, 1 functioning. He makes his check, needing 4+, and it's a 2. He fails. So we don't remove armored vehicles when they fail a platoon morale check. Unarmored gun teams, infantry teams, all those we do. But if they're armored and they fail that platoon morale check, mark them as destroyed. They stay on the table like that. But the platoon is gone. Now I'm going to add a little twist here. And I'm going to add one more tank to the situation. So this one's bailed out. This one's bogged down. This one just got destroyed. We have to do platoon morale check. They got that 4+, and I roll a 6, 5. Okay, roll the 2. Well, they failed the morale check, the platoon morale check. They're going to be taken off the table. We know we don't take vehicles off. Even though they're bailed out and bogged down, we just remove the markers. And mark them as destroyed. So if they're bailed out or bogged down, you do the same thing. You just never take, unless some rule says otherwise, you never take an armored vehicle that's destroyed, whether through a platoon morale check, anything like that, get bailed out or bogged down. We don't take them off. We mark them as destroyed. They stay on the table that way. All right, let me get set up for the next thing. All right, here's the situation. We got a platoon of 5 Shermans, and the enemy's shooting at them, and they destroy this one. Do we need to make a platoon morale check? So we're done with the shooting step. Do we need to? Well, we got 1 destroyed, 4 functioning. No, we got more functioning than destroyed. So, shooting step happens again, and this one gets destroyed. Do we need to make a check now? We're done with the shooting step. Well, we got 2 functioning, 3 destroyed. Or, I got that backwards. 2 destroyed, 3 functioning. No. We got more functioning than destroyed. Well, the opponent, you know what? They hit us again. Now we've got 3 destroyed and 2 functioning. Oh, and this is at the end of the shooting step. Remember, already assault step. It isn't just after they get done shooting and they're getting ready to shoot another of their teams and then we check. We wait till the shooting step's completely done. Okay, so yes, this would require us to take our platoon morale check using our motivation, and we're going to say for explanation purposes here, 4+ because they're confident. All right, a 5. So they will stay in the game. Okay. This one doesn't get destroyed, but the opponent bailed it out. Do we need to make a check? Yes. If a vehicle gets bailed out or destroyed, we check to see if we need to make a check. The opponent bailed it out. That means these guys jump down. There are less tanks working right now. So it will require a platoon morale check. And they're still in the game. They rolled a 5. This one gets destroyed. Will we have to do a check? Yes, of course. And a 3, a failure. So that means this one, that whole platoon's gone. Armored vehicles stay on the table. We mark that one. So just remember, if it gets destroyed or if they get bailed out, it could trigger that morale check, that platoon morale check. Now, there is a few stipulations I will go in to here. So I'm going to put this vehicle back to working. I'm going to take this one, put it back to working. This one. All right. So in this situation, of course, no check needed. 2 destroyed, but we got 3 functioning. Do we need to do a check now? No. When a vehicle is bailed out, what I want you to think about is it's invisible. It's not there. As far as checking destroyed versus functioning, because this is neither destroyed, but it's not functioning either. So it's not counted. So we have 2 destroyed and 2 functioning. So we're still okay. But remember, they may trigger a morale check. Just remember that. That's something that people could forget. That bailed out is the same as destroyed as far as do we have to check. Now, we have a bailed out or bogged down vehicle. So we have a bogged down vehicle. And then this one gets bailed out. Do we need to do a check? Yes. Just like the bailed out vehicle, we don't count. Bogged down vehicles, we don't count as far as checking destroyed versus functioning. Well, in this case, we have 2 destroyed, 1 functioning. Even though they're part of that platoon, they're not destroyed, but they're not functioning either, so they don't count. So just remember, when it comes to bailed out or bogged down, do not count those vehicles for how many is in the platoon for a platoon morale check. Now let me get set up for the next situation. Now we've got an interesting situation here. All the tanks in that platoon are either bailed out or bogged down. Do we need to take a platoon morale check? Well, let me ask you this. Are there more destroyed than working? No. There's no destroyed. There's none working. So that's 0-0. There's no check required because none have been destroyed to begin with. So you don't even have to make a check with these guys until something is destroyed. Now I'm going to take this out. The opponent shoots, destroys this. Will we have to take a platoon morale check? Yes. It's at the end of the shooting step. The opponent has destroyed a vehicle in this. So we will have to check. Okay, we got 1 destroyed, no functioning. Yes, I'll have to take a platoon morale check. And a 1, so that means all these are destroyed now. Now let's say this situation. Would we have to do one now? No. Because we have 1 destroyed and 1 functioning. They don't count. However, the opponent shoots them, bails this out. Would we have to do one? Yes. Because remember, bailing out and destroying will trigger a platoon morale check if needed. Well, this got bailed out, so it could trigger a platoon morale check. We look. We have 1 destroyed, no functioning. You do a check, and they rolled a 1. They're all gone. So we mark them as all destroyed. So in case of this, we would take all these off. And we take all these wonderful turrets off. and that platoon is no longer. So one of the main things I'm trying to get a point across is more teams than destroyed. Check that. But you only have to check if something gets destroyed or if the opponent bails them out. And you saw that even if they're all bailed out and bogged down, there's no check needed because nothing was destroyed. Now, there are some little special rules. Of course, there always seems to be special rules, but there's some special rules as far as some teams you don't count. Now, one of them I already talked about, and that was the bogged down or the bailed out vehicles. We don't count those in a way as far as are they destroyed or functioning. Now, these next things we just totally ignore also. One of them is transport vehicles. We ignore transport vehicles. So let's go back to this situation. I'm going to pull these. All right. The opponent shot, destroyed 3, 2 left. Do we need to make a platoon? Do we need to make a platoon morale check? Of course. We got 3 destroyed, 2 functioning. But now they got a transport. So let's look at the situation. They have a transport with them. It's part of that platoon. It was purchased for part of that platoon, so it's moving along with them. Do we need to make a platoon morale check? Yes. Remember, just like the bogged down or bailed out, we ignore those. You totally ignore transports. Pretend it's not even there. It's invisible. Now look at the situation. Do we need to make a platoon morale check? 3 destroyed, 2 functioning, yes. That does not count. Whether it's bogged down, bailed out, whatever, it doesn't count. As far as number of teams fighting versus those that are not. Now, I've never really seen this happen before, but I'm just going to bring it out there. Another thing you ignore are teams that are removed from the game before the game even starts. Sounds kind of weird, but there may be some what's called like pre-game losses. So before the game even begins, let me do it this way. So I'm going to take this transport out of here. Get these guys set up. So this was the platoon you bought. The game hasn't even started, and for some reason, these 2 get destroyed. They may not even be on the table yet. It's just before the game even starts, you lose these 2. So I'm going to move them down here. For the rest of the game, it's like you didn't even have these. This is the amount in the platoon you're going to check for platoon morale checks is 3 vehicles, not 5. So if they're off the table because or wherever destroyed or whatever because of pre-game losses, maybe there's some preliminary bombardment that destroyed these 2. This platoon now is down to 3 tanks as far as checking platoon morale checks. So you can lose 1, you're fine. You lose the second one, normally you would be okay, but these 2 don't count anymore. These 2 got destroyed. We do need to do a platoon morale check. So we have 2 destroyed, 1 functioning. They don't count. Like I said, I've never really seen that happen before, but it is in the rule book, so I'm just going to bring it up. Because maybe just somebody has some preliminary bombardment or something. That could take some stuff out. Now, another situation that could happen is we got this platoon of 5 tanks, and for some reason, these 2 are removed from the table, not destroyed. Some rule or something says this team's removed from the table. Well, as far as platoon morale checks go, we're down to 3 tanks again. These 3. They were removed from the table. They don't count. They don't help with the numbers, but they don't hurt either because they can't be destroyed. So we're down to 3 tanks. So it's not that they were destroyed and removed. That's a different situation. These were just, the rules say remove them from the table. Now this platoon only has 3 functioning vehicles as far as checking for do we need to make a platoon morale check. Alright, I'm going to move these guys back for this next one. And again, I'm using tanks because they have this leave them on the table stuff, but you know, infantry, gun teams, all those follow the same rules. It's just that you will, if it's a infantry team, you will take them off the table. You don't leave them on the table like these guys and show destroyed. So I'm using vehicles right now for because the vehicles sometimes have little special rules that it's easier for me to explain it already having the vehicles here instead of trying to switch out infantry and vehicles. So these do apply to all teams. Okay. All right, now there are some other teams we ignore, and one of them is warrior teams, like your first in command, or your company commander, I should say. I keep saying first in command. Your company commander, your 2IC or second in command, special characters like Audie Murphy. We ignore those if they're not a permanent part of that platoon. So let's say this is Wittmann. The traitor has gone to the United States. Wittmann the traitor has gone to the United States. He's a permanent part of this platoon. He just can't leave this platoon and go off by himself. Okay? We do count him as part of that platoon. So there's 5 tanks in that platoon. Here's this warrior. But he's not a permanent part of the platoon. He just joined for this turn. He may just go on. He's not a permanent part of this platoon. We do not count him to see if there's a platoon morale check needed as far as destroyed and functioning. We're still at 5 tanks. We're not at 6. So a warrior that is a permanent part of the platoon, we do count. If it's just a visitor, we don't count it. Now, another team, we ignore whether they're a permanent part of the platoon or not, are independent teams, such as your observer is an independent team. A sniper's an independent team. I could have my priest have a Sherman. That's an observer. That's an independent team. You don't count those as part of the platoon to see if you have more functioning than destroyed. It's just like the transports. Yeah, the transport's part of the platoon, but we don't count it for how many are functioning versus how many are destroyed. So it's the same with an independent team, whether they're part of that platoon or not. So the spotter's never going to count as far as do we have more teams destroyed than functioning. Now, we're going to run into a little tricky situation here. Remember that this wonderful warrior here is not part of that platoon. He's just visiting. So he has joined this platoon, and this guy gets blasted. Do we need a platoon morale check? No. We have 1 functioning. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 destroyed, 4 functioning. We're okay. Well, this one doesn't get destroyed, but it gets bailed out. Do we need to make a platoon morale check? No. We have 1 destroyed, 3 functioning. Okay, we're okay. This one gets blasted. And remember, these are at the end of the... I don't want you to think you just do this every time you get hit. That's why I keep bringing this up. It's only at the end of the shooting step and the assault step. So this one now is destroyed. Do we need to make a check? 2 destroyed, 2 functioning, we're okay. This one gets bailed out. Do we need to make a check? 2 destroyed, 1 functioning, yes. And 4, they made it. Now this warrior's joined them for this step to try. He's going to use his armor to help protect this guy. So the shot comes in. Oh, the opponent does awesome. Not enough to destroy it, but bails him out. Will we have to make a platoon morale check? Yes. Even though we don't count him as part of that platoon for how many's in that platoon for checking functioning versus non-functioning, if he's part of that platoon, he's joined that platoon, and he either gets bailed out or destroyed, he can trigger a check. So he got bailed out. Well, remember, if you get bailed out or destroyed, that triggers a check to see, do you need to make a platoon morale check? Put that back, it's bailed out. So he has triggered it, but he still does not count. So we have 2 destroyed, 1 functioning. Okay, he made them do a platoon morale check. If you think about it, this would have been destroyed. So, a 1. In this situation, all these are destroyed. All these destroyed. He's also gone now because he was part of that platoon. So keep that in mind. He's joined that platoon. He's stuck with that platoon until the end. The very, 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 very last thing in that step is he's going to unattach. He's going to unjoin. He's joined with that unit. He's going to, if they fail a platoon morale check, he has to take the consequences of that. Now, another team that could trigger a platoon morale check are those independent teams, like the observer and all that. So if the observer somehow joins this platoon, so we're going to take this guy out, and he gets destroyed, he's going to also trigger a platoon morale check. Because even though he doesn't, it's just like that warrior, even though he doesn't count as far as how many's in that platoon, if he gets bailed out, or you can't bail this out, but I'm just saying, if he gets bailed out or destroyed, it's just as if one of these got bailed out or destroyed as far as making that check. Now, you may run into this situation, it can't be, but this is my first in command, my company commander. Now, he gets rerolls for motivation tests, stuff like that. He's not part of this platoon. This platoon's going to have to make a platoon morale check. And they roll a 3. Oh, they did not make it. They are going to have to be destroyed. Now, well, this guy, once per step, whether the starting step, the shooting step, the assault step, movement step, this guy can give 1 reroll to 1 platoon or 1 team during that step. But he has to join them, so they have to be in command. So he's within command of them, and he goes, well, you know what? I don't want to lose this platoon, because this platoon is the only thing that's going to be able to help me win the game. So he can join them and give them 1 reroll. So they roll and they get a 6. Woohoo! Everybody's okay. We're still in the game. Now you can't reroll that reroll unless some rule says otherwise. You can never reroll a reroll. So now let's say something happens again. They get bailed out again. So they got bailed out again. They have to make their morale check, and he makes it with a 6. So he's okay. But they got bailed out again. Even though he's already bailed out, he got bailed out again. That's going to trigger a platoon morale check. And yeah, we got 2 destroyed, 1 functioning. He doesn't count. He's not even part of this platoon. That's the company commander. So we're going to have to do a check. And they get a 1. Oh, I need that platoon. So he goes, you know what? I'm going to help you guys. Come on. Let's go, guys. Come on. We can take them on. We can take them on. And they roll a 3. Oh, they failed again. So that means every one of these tanks in this platoon are destroyed because they failed that platoon morale check. But you know what? He joined them to give them that reroll. They failed. They failed the reroll. He's also gone. Because he joined that platoon, he cannot unjoin that platoon until the very, very, very end of this step. And this check happens before they unjoin. So you can get that reroll, but you're going to have to take the consequences of that reroll. If they fail, and they're going to be, it's a platoon morale check, and they fail, and they're going to be destroyed, if he joined them during that step and is with them, he's going to take the consequences. Now, let's say this was some special warrior that joined this platoon, but he does not give a reroll, and they fell, he's still destroyed. Because he joined that platoon. He's going to take the consequences of that platoon failing that platoon morale check. So be a little careful with your warriors and stuff joining a platoon that may fail a platoon morale check. Alright, let me get set up for the next thing. Alright, so now we're going to move into company morale checks. So we're done with the platoon morale checks. We're moving into company morale checks. So the first thing is, when do you check? Well, you do it at the start, or at the starting step, I should say. So I'm going to bring this is page 31 of the rulebook. And if you look up here, the steps are starting step, then you have movement step, then shooting step, then assault step. Well, we've gone through movement, we've gone through shooting, we've gone through assault. So this is the very first thing you do on your turn. And if you look right down here, it tells you what you need to do. And I'm going to go over this in another video. So don't, you can read about it and look at it, but I'm going to go over it in another video. I've got to go through all of these other things because of what's in this. I mean, you have airplanes in this, you have bogged down stuff, pinned down, ambushes, okay, and all that stuff. And I want to go over a lot of this stuff before I went over this, because this is going to make more sense now. So it is in here, and it says check company morale. Now the next page, which is 32, it's the same summary. Just there's your checks. And then also in the back of the book, we look right up here, starting step, right there, and they go through the starting step. So in the starting step, this is the only time you make that check. It's when your starting step, not your opponent's, but your starting step. Your opponent's going to have to do his checks on his turn. So it isn't like the platoon morale checks where you do that at the end of the shooting step or end of the assault step. You do this only in that starting step if you need to. Now, how you do the check, well, not how you do check, but when is you check, are there more platoons destroyed than still fighting? So it's not how many teams in a platoon. It's just you're going to look at your platoon, your total army on the table. But there are some things we don't count. We don't count the airplanes. So we're going to take those off. Oh, let's just pretend that this, I should explain this first. This is my force that I'm playing in the Army. This isn't all of it. I'm just putting it out here for demonstration purposes. So I have a Sherman platoon. These are all my platoons. I have an artillery platoon. I have an aircraft, anti-aircraft platoon. I have a machine gun platoon. I have my AOP. I have a rifle platoon. I have my priest platoon. I've got Audie Murphy. And I've got my first and second in command. So this is what I'm playing the game with. My opponent and I decided on so many points. I spent my points on this. So as far as platoons we look at for platoon or not a platoon morale check, but a company morale check, there's a few things we don't count. And that was what I was going before, which airplane's one of them, including the AOP. So those don't count. Now we're down to this. Well, there's another thing we don't count. That is those warriors that are off by themselves. So my first and second command don't count. Guess what? Ani Murphy, him running off by himself if he can and stuff like that, he doesn't count. So now I'm down to this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 platoons. Now, it's more platoons destroyed than functioning. So right now I'm okay. We started the game, we've gone through the starting step, company morale check. No, I don't need to make one. I've got more functioning platoons than destroyed, so I'm okay. So the game goes on, your opponent, oh man. Now I'm going to flip these over for a demonstration to let you see what's alive and what's dead. So these guys in a battle, and oh, the opponent took them out. Opponent's done, it comes to my turn, the starting step, company morale check. I have 1 destroyed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 still functioning. I'm okay. I'm okay. I go through my turn, destroy some of his stuff. He goes through his turn now, and golly, can you believe him? He took out my priest. Man, took out some of my artillery. Oh, so now, do I need to make a platoon morale check? Not a platoon, but a company morale check. Well, let's count. 2 destroyed, 1, 2, 3, 4 functioning. No, I'm okay. I can skip that now. I can go to the next thing. Again, the opponent's turn. This time he takes out the machine gun squad. Oh, things are looking bleak now. I'm down to this. Do I need to make a platoon morale check? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3 destroyed. 1, 2, 3 platoons still functioning. I'm okay. Woohoo! I'm still in the game. I don't have to make that roll. Man, this opponent's just doing awesome. Here's another platoon gone. He took out the anti-aircraft. Do I need to make a check? 1, 2, 3, 4 destroyed. 2 functioning. Oh, that's a check. So the check is the same as the platoon morale check. Reluctant, confident, fearless. And we're going to go with confident on these guys, which is that 4+. And I roll, and it's cocked. Often on this table. So we got a 4. They're still in the game. I did my check. I'm going to go on and play. If I wouldn't have made that, let's say they rolled a 2, game's over. That's it. Game's over. You lost. So that's how you do a company morale check. Check platoons functioning versus destroyed. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these guys back. And so we got 1, 2, 3 destroyed, 1, 2, 3 function. We're okay. But you know, my opponent is just so awesome that he has not taken out this platoon, but he's destroyed most of the platoon. I'm down to 1 Sherman in this platoon. 1 Sherman. So do I need to make a platoon morale check? Well, let's see. We got 1, 2, 3 destroyed, 1, 2, 3 still functioning. This is still a functioning platoon. I still got something living. This platoon's not destroyed, so it's still a functioning platoon. It's okay. I do not have to make the check. Remember, the platoon has to be completely destroyed. So that means all of them are destroyed before we count them. Like these were all destroyed, those were all destroyed, those were all destroyed. This one's mostly destroyed, but it's still going. So we count this one as still a good platoon as far as company morale checks. So who can make this check for you? Well, it's not going to be your platoon leaders. They're for a platoon morale check. Who's going to make that check for you is your first in command is going to make that check for you. Now, the rule is he has to be on the table. So if he's off to the side in reserves or something like that, or been destroyed, he cannot make that check. If he can't make that check, you can use your second in command. But he also has to be on the table. He cannot be on the side in reserves or destroyed. So if you lose both of these, neither of them are on the table, they're off to the side in reserves, you can't even do the check, you automatically fail. If you need to make the company morale check, you automatically fail and you've lost. So if he's on the table, he'll do the check using his rating. If you're first, I should say, you're first in command, your company commander. If your company commander is not on the table and your second in command is, he can do the check instead. Now there is one other person in the game that can do that check, and that is what's called a higher command team. You don't run into this too often, but I found one in the Nuts book, and it's the 101st Airborne. It's Captain Richard Winters, and I'm going to see if I can kind of zoom in, let you see what I'm kind of talking about here. So if you look, it says Captain Richard Winters is a higher command. There it is right there, higher command. Rifle team, blah, 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 blah. But we're looking just mainly for the higher command. So let's pretend that this is Richards. He will make the check instead of your first in command, if he is on the table. Remember, if they're not on the battlefield, you can't use them. You can't use their abilities unless it says otherwise. You can't use their abilities and stuff like that. So let me take these off. So make it a little easier to explain. So the kind of the hierarchy would be higher command team. I'm going to put this down here. So that's like my Winters. If he's not on the table, my first in command is going to do it. If he's not on the table, then my second in command is going to do it. Then if he's not on the table, none of these are on the table, and I have to do that company morale check. Remember, it's only if you have to. If I have to make that company morale check, I fail. I lose the game. I'm going to automatically fail it because I have nobody on the table that can make that roll. I just need one of these guys on there to be able to make that check. So don't forget, your higher company commander can also make that check. And normally, not always, but normally, unless the rule says otherwise, you can never re-roll a company morale check. So just remember, you can never do, because remember, your first in command can give your platoons and stuff that re-roll a motivation. He cannot re-roll that company morale check. Now, there is an exception I noticed, and I'm going to bring out Mr. Winters again, even though it's not him on this, but pretend. If you look at his rule here, it says, a parachute rifle company led by Winters may re-roll the first company morale check. Oops, where is it? Oh, I'm way down here. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. A parachute rifle company led by Winters may re-roll the first company morale check that it is required to take if it fails the first attempt in the game. So he does allow a re-roll. He's one of the few people that does allow a re-roll of the company morale check. Now there is one kind of special situation I want you to kind of be aware of. What we got here is we got a Sherman of 2 platoons. This is not part of their platoon. This is a warrior, and he decided to join his platoon to protect them, so he's going to take the hits because he's got heavier armor. So he joined the platoon, took the hits. He's okay. But, you know, later on, somehow, the opponent Destroyed these two. And he joined, and he made his save, but these two did not. Even though he's not part of this platoon, he joined this platoon. He's the last guy there. He's going to have to make that platoon morale check. If he succeeds, he's okay. He's going to be able to do his warrior stuff as usual. If he fails, he's gone. So do be careful when your warriors join a platoon, because they can be lost. You can lose them just from a platoon morale check. It may be the most awesome tank in the world, but if he's joined a platoon and he has to make that platoon morale check, or they have to, and he's with them and they fail, you just lost that awesome tank. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look at this situation as far as company morale checks. So my opponent and I decided on so many points, and so this is what I spent my points on. And of course, it's just not one Sherman and one artillery piece. This is representing a platoon of Shermans. This is representing the platoon of anti-aircraft. This is representing the platoon of artillery, the platoon of priests, the platoon of infantry, and the platoon of machine guns. So we're getting ready to play. We roll a mission, and man, the mission has reserves. So I'm going to have to put half of these in reserves. So that's 3 of these units. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put the machine gun units. I'm going to move them down here for reserves. So this is going into reserve. I think the anti-aircraft should be in reserve. And I'm going to move the priest into reserve. So I'm going to start the game with my Shermans, my infantry, and my long toms. And later in the game, I'm hoping to get my machine guns, my anti-aircraft, and my priests. So we start the game. We're playing on. Man, this opponent is doing so well. Already took out my Sherman platoon. Do I need to make a platoon morale check? No. Don't need to make one. We're playing the game some more, and whoa. Must have failed a morale check or something, because this platoon is gone. Do I need to make a platoon morale check? Yes. The rule here is we only count what's on the table. We don't count what's in reserve. So these don't even count. I might as well just move these down here as far as what counts and what doesn't. So if you look at it, I have 2 destroyed, 1 still functioning. So that is a company morale check when it comes to my starting step. 4+, failed, game over. I didn't even get these in the game, because they don't count because they were in reserve or destroyed, whatever, off the table. These were the only ones in the battle. That's what counts. Now, let's say this survives, and I get my reserve, so I'm going to bring in the priest now. So now, I got 4 units up there. And this unit gets destroyed. Do I need to make a platoon or a company morale check? No. So I have 2 destroyed, 2 functioning. I'm okay. Woohoo! But you know what? My opponent took care of my artillery. Now I'm down to the priest. Yes, we will. Because again, these don't count. So don't count what's not on the table as far as how many platoons you have. Only count those on the table. Anything in reserve or held in, you know, not so much an ambush, but you know, held off the table like that, don't count. I just want to just clear up a few, just on ambush. As far as ambush goes, if you have a unit in ambush, it is counted as being on the table. So you do get to count that platoon. I just didn't want to confuse you. It's the stuff like in reserves or stuff like that that's held off the table. Those don't count, but those in ambush do count as being in the battle. You just, the opponent just doesn't know where they are, but you still count that platoon. Okay, so next thing I want to cover is some other teams that you will ignore for company morale checks. As far as, are they a platoon that you ignore. Like the airplane. That was one. Ooh, that was interesting. That's one that we will ignore. So don't count the airplane as a platoon. Another one is, as far as like transports go, we don't count transport platoons. And you go, oh, what? What's a transport platoon? Well, I did some searching, and in my North Africa book, the rifle company here, and if we look here, it says infantry transport truck section, and it's on page 249. So if I go to page 249, there's my truck section, and it tells you right here, a truck section follows the rules for transport platoons in the rule book. So this is a transport platoon. So if I purchase this as part of my force, I can't count it as one of my platoons as far as a platoon morale check. That it's like they don't exist. Okay, another thing we're going to ignore, let me get this, is not Shermans. We're not going to ignore Shermans. But I got this platoon of Shermans, and actually there is 5 in this platoon. So let me get these where you can see them. And where's my 5th one? It's hiding on me. Found it. And it was the commander of them. Get up here with your guys. Quit eating. Alright, so this platoon's here. This is what I purchased for the game. So I get to use these 5 Shermans as that platoon. And for some reason, before the game even began, maybe some preliminary bombardment or whatever, but this Sherman and this Sherman, before the game even begins, nobody's had a turn yet. Turn 1 hasn't happened. But I suffered those 2 losses out of this Sherman platoon. So now, I got those 2 destroyed, 3 functioning. From now on, as far as platoon morale checks or the company and all that, don't count them. Now, let's say this whole platoon was destroyed. So now they're all, we'll bring those back. So now, the game hasn't started, and all of them were destroyed before the game even started. Turn 1 hasn't even happened. Well, you know what? I don't even count this platoon anymore as one of the platoons for counting how many, as far as for a platoon morale check. This one non-existent anymore. It might as well be a transport platoon or an airplane as far as counting it now. So it's not going to count against you. It isn't like you lost this platoon and now you're 1 platoon down on the platoon morale check. It just doesn't count anymore because it's destroyed before you even had a chance to do anything. That's just not fair for you. So they're not counted at all. So keep that in mind. So pre-game losses, don't count them as a platoon for the platoon morale checks. Get these out of the way. Another team we're going to ignore. We talked about the airplane, the transport platoons. Just showed about that. Another thing we're going to ignore are warriors. First, second in command, any independent warriors, not one that's attached to the platoon, because that's a platoon. He's part of that platoon. He's going to suffer consequences. These guys are kind of, they just run around by themselves. We're not going to count those. So they don't count as far as a platoon morale check. Another one that won't count is any independent teams. So one of them could be a sniper. That's an independent team. We're not going to count that. So don't count warriors that are independent. They could just run around with it. If they're a permanent part of the platoon, do count that platoon. But if it's a warrior that's by himself, which your company commander and second commander are warriors, so don't count those as far as how many platoons you have for a platoon morale check. Independent warriors, I should say independent warriors, but other named warriors, maybe I should say it that way. And independent teams or platoons, don't count those. Alright, some people may not know, but when you build your forces, you can combine more than one company. So what I mean by that is, let's say I really want to mess with my opponent. I'm thinking, I'm really going to mess with him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend part of my points on a tank company from Blood, Guts, and Glory. But I'm also going to take a rifle company from Devil's Charge. I can do that. I can't spend, let's say it's 1,900 points. I can't go 1,900 points, 1,900 points. I have to kind of split that whole. This better cost 1,900 total. So maybe I'm going 950 points, 950 points. Now, I'm still required to take the black boxes. So that's kind of what I did here. There's my lead, my company commander, my HQ, and the two. This is representing those two platoons. Okay. And then, as far as the tank company goes, my HQ, which is up here, and then my two required platoons. So let's say this came out exactly to how many ever points my opponent and I are playing. So we got our HQ, the Sherman platoon, which were required. Of course, that's required too. And then my HQ for the rifle squad with the required platoon and the required platoon. Now, let's say the game goes on, and then this gets destroyed. I don't know why I like destroying Shermans today. And then this one gets destroyed. So those platoons are gone. Do I have to do a company morale check? I mean, if you think about it, I got 2 destroyed, 2 working. These are warriors. They don't count, so they might as well not even be there. Yes, I will have to. I look at each company separately. Look at this one. This company here has 2 platoons destroyed, no platoons working. Have to do a company morale check. There are 4. Let's say we rolled a 4. We're successful. We can go on. This company, okay. 2 successful. We're okay. But what if they get destroyed? Have to do 1 for that and 1 for that. So I'll roll once, compare it. 5, they're both okay. Now, I'm going to bring this back. Let's say they roll and, I did it. I failed, yay. Oh, actually, that sounds crazy to say I failed, yay. Okay, I failed. This company failed its morale check, or its company morale check. I've lost the game. Game's over. Any one of these companies fail a company morale check, I lose the game. Because they're going to tear it up. They're going, well, wait, where are they going? Well, we're going to get out of here too. So it may seem kind of like a neat idea. Ooh, I'm going to get, I'm going to take the best from this book and I'm going to take the best from that book. But when you get down to it, it may mess you up. Because if you don't have that many forces, it won't take much to have you start doing company morale checks. And that could just end the game for you just like that. So you can do that if you want to. That option is out there. Alright, we're almost done. Next I want to talk about a sole surviving infantry team. So this applies only to infantry. Not vehicles, not gun teams. Infantry. So it could be a bazooka. Alright, so I've got this platoon here. And they've been getting shot up. I should have brought Germans out here. They're getting shot up. And it doesn't matter if it's him or him. We'll just do this. So we got a sole surviving infantry team. It could be their platoon leader too. So don't think just it's only the regular guys. It could be their leader. But he's the only infantry team left out of that platoon. And he survived the platoon morale check. Let's see if I can do it. Come on. 4 or higher. I should say 1 or higher and just make it 3. Okay. Yeah, I was successful. I got a 5. So he survived every starting step. Remember I talked about starting step? I'm starting to head more into it. I'm going to get into it hopefully soon after the airplane. But starting step, right there. Check sole surviving infantry teams. Every starting step from then on, this guy is going to have to do kind of like a platoon morale check to see if he stays in the game. So rolling it, 6. Woohoo! We're staying in the game. Next turn comes around, starting step, check. A 1. He runs off. That platoon is now destroyed. So that could count against you. It will count against you now. As far as, do you need to make a company morale check? And if you look at the steps here, they're ordered in number. This is the very first thing you have to do before you do a company morale check. So this may be what's keeping you from doing a company morale check, but once he's gone, boom, you are now making company morale checks every turn. Another thing that this can do is just voluntarily leave the table by going off a table edge, and then they're removed, and of course it's your platoon's still destroyed, so. But they can voluntarily leave the table, but then they cannot come back into the game. Now, there is one type of infantry, if they're by themselves, will not have to do a sole surviving infantry team check, and that is your warrior. I guess it would be your, yeah. So any warriors that are infantry, so obviously your first, second in command, any little special characters like Audi, they never have to take that check. So if his whole platoon is gone and he survives that platoon morale check, he does not have to take a sole surviving. He's a warrior. He's special. You paid points for him. They're special. You should be able to keep them in the game longer. So just remember, as far as infantry team goes, the ones that do not have to take that sole survivor check are warriors. Well, that's all I've got for this episode. I think the next one is, let me double check here. Yes, we are going into aircraft, which I'm going to talk about the ground attack aircraft, which is that one. And another video I'm going to talk about, because it needs its own video, is the air observation post. And yes, it's wonderfully not painted because I just recently got it. So enjoy the gray. Okay, so until next time, as always, have a good game.